All right, so here's the final product. Now, you might be wondering why there's a black bar on the top and the bottom. That's because I originally built this app with an iPhone 4 using a really old version of Xcode, and for some reason the storyboards won't let me adjust to the larger screen. But we'll fix that in our project, so you'll have a full screen app when you're done with it. But the idea is that we're going to have a label up here. We'll have a bunch of labels down here, and all of these labels will not be defined directly in the storyboard, but instead we're going to define them in an array, and we're going to retrieve them from an array. Right? So, and furthermore, we'll define the array in the AppDelegate and retrieve it from the AppDelegate. So we're not going to define in the view controller. We're going to define directly in the AppDelegate. And if we hit this page button, we're going to go to another page. Again, same idea. We're going to retrieve these pieces of information from a dictionary now. So this page will focus on getting stuff from a dictionary, and that dictionary will also reside in the AppDelegate. Okay. So yes, this is the app. This is what we're going to build by the end of the class today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. So go File and New and Project. And it'll be a single view application. So iOS application, single view application. I'm going to call this one Dictionary Delegate, because we're going to be using a dictionary. We'll also use an array, and we're going to use Delegate to work our app here. And Objective-C, Universal App, uncheck all the 3 items as usual. So no core data, no UI tests, and no unit tests in this app. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give this app a home, or at least this project a home, and create. Okay. So this app's going to be an iPhone 5 app, so I'm going to just choose iPhone 5 right off the bat. And just place my windows properly. Okay, so there we go. All right. So first thing we'll do is create our groups. So we can organize our stuff. So we'll have view controllers. We'll have nibs. We'll have special classes. Move AppDelegates to special classes. Our view controllers to the view controllers. Location.storyboard to nibs. And main.storyboard to nibs as well. And so all of our stuff is properly organized here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by defining launchScreen.storyboard. And we'll define it as an iPhone 4-inch, assuming that you're using an iPhone 5. Orientation is portrait. And all I'm going to do is throw one label on this time. Just put the word loading here. All right, so we'll put the word loading here. And then do Command S to save. So once we have our loading page done, we're going to move over to main storyboard. Okay, and inside main storyboard, we have just a home page for now. And if we click on the yellow circle, we'll configure the size to also be an iPhone 4-inch. So it only brings about just the home page. But here's the thing, we're going to add a second page to this. So we should also do that right now. We can right-click on View Controllers and say New File, iOS Source Cocoa Touch Class, and give it a home. So now I have two view controllers. I have viewcontroller.h&m and I have gameViewController.h&m. And we'll write the code later on. We'll just finish configuring the two storyboards. So going back to main.storyboard, or rather the two view controllers on the storyboard. We have one view controller right now. It's casted to viewcontroller.h&m, so that's done for us. So let's start off by bringing in another view controller. We'll drag that over. We'll configure its size to be iPhone 4-inch, its orientation to be portrait as well. So now we have two screens here. I'll try to bring them close as I can. So we have two screens. With the second page, the most important step here is to cast this screen to that object we just created, so the game view controller. By going to the third option here with the custom class. So making sure the yellow circle is highlighted, making sure the third option, which is the identity inspector, is highlighted. Under class, find your class name, which is game view controller. You can start typing in the word game, and then you'll auto-complete it and hit tab, and then you'll have game view controller. So this first page is casted to view controller. The second page is now casted to game view controller, which is right here. So both our objects are casted together. Now, all that's left is to create our objects on the screen. So we're going to put a bunch of labels this time around. And we'll start with the first page, and we'll look for labels. So we'll search for labels in the search bar, and we'll bring, first off, our title. Now, traditionally, for the past apps we've been doing, we've been hard-coding the title. This time around, we're not. We're just going to leave it as the word label. So I go back to my fourth option, the attributes inspector. I can configure this label. I'm going to leave it as the word label, but just center justify it. So I'm not going to put anything in here yet. This we're going to retrieve from the AppDelegate as a string. And then we'll do is we'll bring in more labels. Put in one label here, stretch it out. Center it. But this label, this is the only label I'm going to edit. I'm actually going to put the word options here, because I'm going to have a list of options below it. We'll bring in 3 more labels. You can even copy and paste them if you want. All right, this will stay as the word label. Okay, so we have all our labels in place. Very basic app, no pictures, nothing fancy about it. We're just focusing on bare bones coding for today. And so we're going to have these labels that we're going to overwrite with information, but from different sources. The only thing left that I'll add here is a button. So I'm going to search for a button. Put the button near the bottom. So we're going to break away from tradition of putting our buttons at the top with a navigation bar. We're going to instead put it at the bottom in this case. And change the text of the button to be the word begin. You can even resize it if you want, just for more space and center. All right, so this will be our first page. Now our second page, we're going to put a bunch of labels and a button again. Since we already have the button ready to go, let's just put the button here at the bottom. Even resize it. Center it, and put the word back or home, whichever one you want. And then we'll add our labels. So here we're going to start with the title label at the top. Now really for consistency, we should actually go with the same dimensions on the previous page and locations just to make it look really good. But for time's sake, we'll just drag labels up. And center or justify. So this is our title label. Again, it's going to come from the AppDelegate. It's going to be an NS string we'll retrieve and overwrite. And then we have 4 more labels we want to bring in. But what we're going to do here is just to understand what's going to go here. We'll put some words here. But we're going to add to it. So we'll put like score for this one. Bring in another one. Center, justify, and this will be level. And so score, level, high score. And finally, time left. Okay, so this will be all of our labels. We're basically done putting stuff on our screen now. The only thing left now is to actually connect these to items in code. Okay, so we'll do a Command S to save. And then the first thing we'll do is jump over to viewcontroller.h. And let's configure the header files for each of these classes. So we'll start off with viewcontroller.h. We have 4 labels we're going to configure here. So we're going to say IB_outlet, UI label. First one will be star and then LB title. And then the next 3 are the 3 options that are on the screen for the home page. So we'll say IB_outlet, UI label, and then LB op1, IB_outlet, UI label, then LB op2, IB_outlet, UI label, and then LB op3. Do our property declarations for these variables. So we'll say at property, non-atomic and strong, meaning hold on to the data as long as you can and make this variable shareable amongst threads. And that's our header file. All right, so the next step now is once the header file is done, we should go ahead and synthesize these variables. So go to viewcontroller.m and synthesize each variable. So we'll say at synthesize, LB title, LB op1, LB op2, and LB op3. Now, because this page is going to be a home page for another page, meaning that that page is going to return back, we need to create our unwind method in this class. So we need to be able to unwind to this view controller. So we're going to create an IB action method called unwind to this view controller, just like we did in previous apps that had multiple pages. And the main thing to take away here is that this argument must not be ID, but instead must be UI storyboard segue star. And the method can be empty. It's fine if it's empty. And what we're going to do with this object is leave it for now. We're going to come back and finish this object up once we are done with the AppDelegate. But what we want to do first is configure the other page's view controller and do all the connections, and then finally come back and do the AppDelegate, and then do this. So we'll save this for now. We'll do Command S to save. And then we'll go over to the other pages, the game view controller.h, and define our variables here. So here we have also a bunch of labels. So we'll say IB outlet, UI label, and then star LB title, IB outlet, UI label. This will be LB score, IB outlet, UI label, and then LB time, IB outlet, UI label, and then LB level. And finally, IB outlet, UI label, and then LB high score. And we'll do our property declarations for these as well. So non-atomic and strong. And just copy these for the other 4 variables. Save this. And so now the game view controller header file is done. And so what we're going to do now is synthesize those variables. So we'll switch over to gameViewController.m. Synthesize these guys. All right, so we have all of our variables in place. All right, so what we're going to do now is once the variables are in place, we have most of our coding done. We're going to leave view.load and this object alone for a little bit. We're going to come back to this after we're done with the AppDelegate. But let's actually take a moment and go back to main.storyboard and connect everything up. So we have a working app here. So I'll start with the home page. Click on the yellow circle, go to Connections Inspector, and we should see all of our variables listed. So we're going to connect all of these up. So op1 will be that guy, op2 will be that one, op3 will be this one, and title will be the very first one. So we have all of our labels connected up. The only thing left to connect is the begin button. Right? So just to recap, this is lbop1, this is lbop2, and this is lbop3. And this is lbtitle. Right? So if I mouse over each of these, you can see which ones are connected. Okay. Now to connect the begin button as a segue to the next page. So the easiest way to do it is just expand out our document outline and look for our button. Hold down the control button, drag until we get to Game View Controller, let go, and say Present Modally. And so now the begin button's connected. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll move over to the second page, highlight its yellow circle, looking at the connections inspector, connect everything up. So high score will go to high score, level will go to level, score will go to score, time go to time left, and title will go to title. And finally, we want to connect this home button to our unwind segue, so to our exit icon at the top. So mousing over home, I'm going to hold down control and drag home to the exit button and choose unwind to this view controller. And so now at this point, our storyboard is complete. Everything's all connected. We can actually give it a run and see what it looks like. So there's our loading page. And there's our home page. Right now it just has label, options, and a bunch of labels. Our begin button goes to a new page, label, score, level, high score, time left. So we haven't done anything in code yet. We've just connected up the app to the degree that we want to get it to. So we just hit home, goes back to the home page. Okay, so now the next step in building our app is to actually create. So the next step in building our app is to actually go into the AppDelegate and create our array, our dictionary, and our string, and we're going to retrieve that into our view controllers and display it there. So we're going to go to AppDelegate. We're going to start with appdelegate.m and then go to H. The only reason we're going to go start with M is because I want to explain what's here. So there's a number of different methods that control the management of the app, the app lifecycle, that is. The first method, and this is probably the most common method you will use, is didFinishLaunching with options. This takes a similar approach to the viewDidLoad method in the view controller, where we talked about viewDidLoad being the method that automatically runs the code upon loading the view onto the screen. So here, similarly, didFinishLaunching with options will execute upon launching the app for the first time. And what it's going to do is it'll only run once until you kill the app and you run it a second time and you relaunch the app, or the third time or the fourth time. But it's useful for configuring information like connecting to a database, or if you're writing a game and you want to use GameKit and you want to connect to Game Center, so you can connect to Game Center here. If you want to take analytics and create some analytics using an analytics software, you can load that analytics software here. So there's a lot of things you can do upon loading the app for the first time. There's a lot of options here. There's other methods like application will resign active, did enter background, did enter or will enter foreground, did become active, and will terminate. And they all kind of, the names are very intuitive, and there are descriptions for each of these methods here that you can read through. But for the most part, we'll stick with didFinishLaunching with options. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come back to this method after we go to the header file and put our information in the header file first. Now the header file looks very similar to the view controller, any view controller.h file that we have. But what we're going to do here is we're going to put our variables in first. So what we're going to do is create our curly brackets. put our curly brackets in, and we're going to define our title string variable. So we're going to say NSString title. Then what we're going to do is we're going to define an array for our options. So on the first page we had options. We had option 1, option 2, and option 3. Those are going to be our 3 options there. So we're going to define an array, NSMutableArray that is. We're going to call this one options. And then for the second page we had score, high score, level, and time left. We're going to put that into a dictionary called scores. So we're going to say NSMutableDictionary. Call it scores. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create property declarations for each of these. In fact, we'll just reuse this property declaration here from UI window. And we'll talk about UI window in a future app. So we're going to leave the discussion for today on this object window of type UI window. We'll come back to it in a future app, and we'll go into heavy detail about what UI window and what the window object's all about. But for now, we'll save this header file. And we'll jump over to the M file. And we're going to synthesize these variables no differently than we synthesize variables in a view controller. Say synthesize our title, options, and scores. And we're going to do all of our work inside didFinishLaunching with options. First thing we'll do is we'll define our title. So we'll say self.title is equal to dictionary and delegate app. So that's our title. We defined it right there. And the next step is to define our array of options. So we're going to say self.options, and we're going to define it directly in it with the constructor. So we're going to say NSMutableArray alloc init with objects. And we'll just define our 3 objects here. So we'll say the first one being play game, the second one being settings, the third one and final one being about app. And then close off the square bracket and put a semicolon at the end. See if I can break these up into multiple lines for readability. There. So this is our array. And this is how we might auto-initialize an array. Now with regular NSArray, we can do the exact same thing and just take out the word mutable. And it'll work the exact same way. In fact, this is how you're supposed to do with it, just NSArray alone. But you can also work with NSMutableArray since it's a child class of NSArray. All right, so we've done the array for options. We're going to do the dictionary now. So we're going to say self.scores is equal to NSMutableDictionary. Oh, we need the square first. And then dictionary. This basically allocates the memory for the dictionary object. And because it's mutable, we can manually add stuff one at a time. So we'll take that approach for this. And this approach is similar to the NSMutableArray. We can do the exact same thing as just defining an empty array and then add stuff after. So we're looking at two ways of defining arrays and dictionaries here. So we'll start off by adding our first item to scores. So we'll say scores, a set object. The first object will be our score, and we'll just say the score is 3,421. The key for it will just be the word score. And then the second will be scores, set object, and this one will be the level, so we'll say level. We'll say the level is 34. The key will just be the word level. Scores, set object, and then this time around we'll say the high score is 987,332. This key will just be high. And we can use multiple words for our keys. That's allowed. We'll just keep it simple and just use one word here. And then finally, for the time left, we'll say scores, set object to time left to be 43 seconds. Say the key for that is just time. And that'll be it for this method. So at this point, we've defined our title being Dictionary and Delegate app. We've defined our options to be play game, settings, and about app. So it's an array of 3 items going from 0 to 2. And then we've got scores, which is a dictionary that starts off with score, level, high, and time as being our keys, and the values being these. And that's it for the AppDelegate. At this point now, all we have to do is retrieve this information and put it onto our screen using the variables we defined for each view controller as IB outlets. So we can do a Command S to save this file. And let's start off with viewcontroller.m. And because these variables exist in another object, which is the AppDelegate, and we want to take advantage of that object, in this case being AppDelegate.h, we need to import the AppDelegate.h file because it has these variables and we want access to them. So we're going to start off in viewcontroller.h and import, in viewcontroller.m and import AppDelegate.h. All right. Now here's the thing. We want to, and I don't want to say the word instantiate because we're not exactly instantiating this object. We want access to this object. Because the AppDelegate object is a singleton object, meaning it's only ever singly instantiated per app. It's instantiated once, and it's not allowed to be instantiated a second, third, or fourth time ever inside an app. Because we just want it to be a centralized place to access information from this app once. Right? So objects request access to this object, but they can't go ahead and instantiate this object. All right, so what we're going to do now is request access to this object. So inside viewDidLoad, I'll just push this up a bit. We're going to start off by requesting access to this object by defining this object. So we'll say AppDelegate. We'll call it main_delegate is equal to UI application using double square bracket, shared application, closing off one square, and then saying delegate. And we'll also cast this to AppDelegate star. So now let's look at this line in detail. We're creating an AppDelegate variable called main_delegate. We are not instantiating it, so we're not using alloc, we're not using init, so we're not instantiating this object. This object has already been instantiated at this point. It's been instantiated upon loading the app, and it's done behind the scenes. So we never see the alloc and init for AppDelegate at all. What we're doing here is saying that within this application, from the UI application object, look for a shared object, and that shared object should be our delegate, or basically our AppDelegate. It's saying get back the delegate object from all of our shared objects or all of our singleton objects and return it back. So in this case, this line is basically saying give me access to the AppDelegate object. I know it's already been instantiated. I just want access to the current value and the current state of this object. That's all it's saying. So this is giving us access to the object. So we can go ahead and start using the variables inside that object. And so the variables that we defined were title, scores, and options. So we can now go ahead and start using them. So we had inside viewController, we had LB title. So let's set the title first. Let's say LB title set text to main_delegate.title. So now the label title, the UI label, that's connected to our title label on the storyboard is now setting its text to be main_delegate.title, which we defined it as dictionary and delegate app. So that's what should appear when we load the app. Now, for the next thing, we want to take the three options that we defined, so op1, op2, and op3, and we want to have those retrieve the information from the options array. So we're going to say LB op1 set text. We're going to open up a new set of square brackets and say main_delegate.options object at index 0. So if we look at this line of code, we want to set this text for LB op1 to be the very first index of the options array. So first thing we do is we retrieve. So we always do the innermost brackets first. We retrieve the first index, index 0 of the options array. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other two labels. So we're just going to say LB op2 set text to be main_delegate.options object at index 1. And then finally the same thing for LB op3 set text main_delegate.options object at index 2. And that's it for this page. And we can go ahead, you can run this app to test out that everything works. So we have loading, and on your home page you should see dictionary and delegate app. You should see options, play games, settings, and about app. So you should see the options you put inside the options array. You should see your title that you defined in didFinishLaunching with options. And when you hit the begin button, you still don't see anything. You still see generic label, score, level, high score, and time left. That's the next thing to do. So let's finish this app off by going to gameViewController.m and doing the same thing there. So inside gameViewController.m, we're going to do the exact same thing again. We're going to import AppDelegate.h. So now we have access to the AppDelegate object again. And inside ViewDidLoad, we're going to do the same thing. We want to request access in this view controller to the AppDelegate object. So again, we're not instantiating it, we're requesting access to it. So we're going to say AppDelegate main_delegate is equal to UI application after opening a double set of brackets shared application, close one bracket, and then say delegate, but then cast it to AppDelegate star. So like before, we're requesting access to this AppDelegate variable or AppDelegate object. So now we'll populate the title again like we did before in the other view controller. So we'll say lb_title is set text to main_delegate.title. And now we had the the four labels, the scores, the high score, the time, and the level. We're going to populate those with the information from the dictionary this time around. So the dictionary was called scores, so we're going to retrieve that information here. So what we'll do here is we'll break up into pieces. We'll say NSString SC for score is equal to main_delegate.scores object for key. They'll provide the key, so we want the score value. And then what we'll say here is lb_score set text to SC. Okay. We'll do the same thing here. We'll say NSString. This time we're going to do the same thing for high score. So we'll say HS for high score is equal to main_delegate.scores object for key. And this time we'll provide the high label. And then we'll do lb high score set text to HS. And then we'll do another NSString. Call this one TM for time is equal to main_delegate.scores object for key. And this time we'll say time. And then say lb time set text to TM. Finally, we'll do NSString, and this will be LV for level is equal to main_delegate.scores object for key. Key is level. And then lb level set text to LV. And that's it. Give it a run, and you should see everything on the second page. So loading, we have our home page, we have all the information loaded. Hit begin, and now we can see dictionary and delegate app for the second page. Score is 3421, levels 34, high score is 987332, and time left is 43. And so now we built a very basic app with just 2 pages, but the main thing to take away here is that we've used an array, we've used a dictionary, and we've used the AppDelegate to retrieve information. And the main thing to take away from the AppDelegate is that it is a singleton object, meaning it's instantiated once and only once ever in an app's lifecycle. And what you do is you don't instantiate the object, you request access to the object using UI application, shared application, delegate.